Hello and welcome.
Welcome.
We're going to get started here in just a minute.
And don't worry on the recording. We will get started soon.
Yeah,
Um, Waiting for
Should have
people
had some like intro music or
you
something.
know,
on. And we were just talking about how tonight we chose this night because the moon is in Gemini and Mercury's retrograde, and that was an impediment. So we thought a Gemini moon might help us with having our thoughts in a row, maybe. And also, it's Friday the 13th. So happy Friday the 13th to all who celebrate that day.
good day. Good day.
Shall we get started?
Are we ready to get started? Are we ready to rock and roll?
I
Good.
am.
Let's go. Hello and welcome everyone to the Magic of Change, a 2025 year ahead forecast. I'm so excited to welcome you all to this phenomenal recording that's about to happen and to the beauty and magic of Stars Dance Mystery School. It has been my great good fortune to be a founding member of Stars Dance with Tare and Aurora and to be able to go into what will be our fifth year of astrology and magic in 2025. So, Aurora, if you could hit our next slide.
A little Mercury retrograde lagging here. There we go. There it is.
Star Sands Mystery School is a co-facilitated online school. We primarily use Discord for our classroom learning space, but we are off of Patreon for all of our um, homework and packets, for lack of a better word. And we invite you, if you're not yet a Stars Dance Mystery School member, to join us on Patreon and in Discord. We have a really beautiful community, and we focus on so much of the moon and the moon's transits through the sky. And it really guides our work, which is one of the reasons why we talked about the moon being in Gemini. Next slide, please. Like I said, my name's Hemlock Shining Coil. I use she, they pronouns, and I am so pleased to moderate this discussion tonight. I'm here tonight with Tara Parsley Starnes, who is our primary teacher and founder of Stars Dance Astrology, and Aurora Donning, who uses she, her pronouns, and is our co-founder of Stars Dance Mystery School, and tonight's slide designer extraordinaire. Um, yeah, so we're going to have a really lovely discussion with these two astrologers. Um, tonight's order of operations. We'll go over some main overarching, really high level 10,000 foot transits of the year. And then for each lunar cycle, because our school is so focused on the lunar cycles, um, rather than the months, which a lot of other astrology forecasts go month to month, and we give you something a little different. Um, we'll talk about the new and full moon magic with Aurora and transits per lunar cycle that are important to look out for with Tare. Um, and Aurora, do you want to explain what a decan is?
Sure. Hi, hello. My name is Aurora. I'm here to basically be forecasting through the lunar cycles using a system called the decans, which is a system that I've been using for quite some time. It's basically the process, it's been around for a long, long time, but it's the process of dividing a sign of the zodiac, so Aries, Taurus, Gemini, into three sections. So Aries 1, Aries 2, Aries 3, Taurus 1, Taurus 2, Taurus 3. Each chunk of the zodiac, each of those signs is 30 degrees, and it just breaks it up by degree. So Aries 1 is 0 to 9, Aries 1 is 0 to 9 degrees, Aries 2 is 10 to 19, and then Aries 3 would be 20 to 29. And it allows you to get a little bit more specific with the nuances of each sign. It's sort of like there's so much dimension to each one. It's just the ability for us to break it down into even more, nuanced chunks of the energy to get more specific. And for the purposes this evening, we'll be looking at the new and full moon decan, so exactly where it will be, and then some magical ideas for you for the new and full moons using that energy that's available to us.
Perfect. Thanks. Next slide. So just as a heads up, there is a lot of information with these main transits and with the lunar cycle ahead, the lunar cycles ahead. Know that you will be getting the recording. You don't have to remember everything. You can always come back and watch the recording later. You can take notes now and later. But there's going to be a lot of information. 2025, we called it the magic of change because there's going to be so much change in the sky. There's going to be a lot of energy shifts. So we're just going to take it as it comes and breathe into tonight and 2025. And I think this is where I hand it off to Tara and Aurora for you two to take it away and walk us through the magic of change.
So there's a couple of things that I want people to know. You should be able to use your captions. If you click on show captions, you should be able to see captions. And if you're having technical difficulty, put a message in the chat and Hemlock's going to help us with those kind of things. Also, I just want to really put in a plug for our mystery school, because we're going to give you so much information, and what we do in mystery school is we break it down, and we have this lovely monthly lunar cycle based workbook that you get every month with this information in it, in a way to have your own magic. So what's unique about our mystery school, I think, is that we're witches, and we are thinking about how the celestial influences fit into changing the world, into our intention, into our own growth, but also into helping the world, and a world that's in a lot of need, to make some important changes. And so we have that point of view in our school, but we're also very welcoming of many different styles, and that was said before. Many different styles of astrology and many different styles of magic. So we love the ways we get to inspire each other with our different traditions and practices. So 2025 is going to be a lot of change, and we're going into it with a couple of really important retrogrades. So right now Mars is retrograde, and then right after Mars turns direct, Venus is going to go retrograde this year, and at the beginning of the year. And these two retrogrades are kind of getting us into a bit of a unique start, and especially the Mars, because Mars has been opposing Pluto, or has already one time opposed Pluto, and is going to oppose Pluto two more times as the new year gets off. So right the day before the election in the US, we had a Mars opposite Pluto, and then in January we're going to have another one, and then in April we're going to have the third one. And so this has been a huge infusion of knowing that the era has changed when Pluto went into Aquarius last year. So Mars is sort of like coming in and saying, yes, we are in a new era, and this era is all about Aquarius, which ranges from aliens driving drones to people taking the law into their own hands, to changing the culture and creating revolution. And so I want people to have that idea that we're entering a really strong revolutionary time, and this Mars retrograde is part of that. But we're also going to have these huge new ingresses of Neptune and Saturn into Aries. So They are traveling really close together, and they've been in Pisces for the last couple of years. Neptune for 14 years, Saturn for 2 years, has been in Pisces, and they've been mixing things up in Pisces, and they're going to blast into Aries at the first part of the year. And that is a really big deal. You know, in astrology, we kind of think of Pisces as the end of a whole cycle, the last sign of the 12 signs, and Aries is the beginning. And the 0 degrees Aries is known to be like a real instigator of change and something new and something really world changing happening. It's called, you know, the Aries ingress, which aligns with spring in the Northern Hemisphere, is all about just what's going to emerge, what's new, what's going to blast out of the, uh, you know, of this sort of Pisces sort of fogginess. So we've got that coming up. We've got also Jupiter changes sign every year. It's going to go from Gemini, where it's been, into Cancer, where it's exalted. And so Jupiter is going to bring in some help. Actually, you know, there's helping, and there's things that are happening this year that are aligning and kind of really interesting. So not everything is like, oh my God, doom and gloom with Mars opposite Pluto. We start off the year with a lot of doom and gloom, but it's not all bad. And Jupiter being in Cancer is that way. We've been in a cycle where Jupiter and Saturn have been squared each other. This happens, Jupiter and Saturn have a 20-year cycle. And in 2020, they came together in a conjunction. And last year, they separated enough to where they were in their first separating square. And Jupiter and Saturn are all about the interplay between a conservative sort of, you know, deadening our conservative force, and Jupiter being an expansive force. And I believe that our last election, the outcome of our last election, was sort of the stalemate between what feels generative and expansive and what feels kind of retreating and conservative. And we're really in this dynamic. So that's been part of what has been going on for us, why we can't really break through, I think, in a way. And that dynamic is going to continue into 2025, but shift a little bit, because Saturn will be not as in a good sign when it's in Aries. It's in its fall, but Jupiter will be in its exaltation. So Jupiter is going to bring in a lot more hope this next year than it did last year. And then we have another huge transit where Uranus is going to go into Gemini. It's been in Taurus for 7 years, where we've been feeling these rumblings and grumblings of how we need to change our relationship to the earth and to economies and to our values. And in Gemini, Uranus and Gemini is going to feed into that, Pluto being in Aquarius, because they're both air signs. And there's going to be just like this takeoff in thought and in innovation, in science, technology, learning. There's going to be a huge energy shift with Uranus going into Gemini. So those are the things that I want you all to know about the overview. And we're going to get granular now. So you could do the next, I'm just going to give you some more dates. Another thing we always look at are where are the nodes of the moon and when are the eclipses. And the nodes of the moon change signs. They're always in a pair of opposite signs, and they're going to change signs this year. They change signs every 18 months. And they're going to go from the north node being in Aries to the north node being in Pisces. And you're going to hear Aries and Pisces throughout this forecast, because that feels like the big thing, is that we're going back and forth between Pisces and Aries, and back and forth. And I feel like that's through Pisces, it's asking us to tap into our intuition and into our mysticism and into our spirituality. So that's where the North Node is, and we'll have a couple of eclipses in Pisces. The South Node will be in Virgo, and that's a lot more about pragmatism and order and systems. South Node being the things that we're letting go of, and the things that we're that we're moving away from. So there's a direction towards the north node, and so the south node being a thing that we're either letting go of or rethinking. So we're rethinking the ways we create systems, and the ways we create order, and the ways we are in service, and the ways that we are trying to kind of bring things into a devotional practice. So those are the things that we're letting go of, and we're moving towards this Pisces energy of how we're all connected, how we're all more subtly in connection than we even know. And there's lots of subtleties and nuances in this Pisces that I will try to get into a little bit as we move through the year. And so, what's the next? We were thinking of, yeah. So I talked about Mars already, and here are some of the dates. It's been kind of moving under the surface since October. And then Mars it started in Cancer, went into Leo, it turned retrograde the early part of December. It's at the beginning of the year, around January 6th, it's going to go back into Cancer. And Mars in Cancer is a very moody energy. When Mars is moving backwards, we're reviewing. Maybe we're reviewing conflicts. Maybe we're reviewing things that hurt us, because Cancer is a very sensitive energy. So it's a moody time while Mars is moving retrograde, and then it's going to station direct at the end of February and go back into Leo on April 17th, and we're going to have our third and final Pluto opposite Mars transit. And then finally, the whole impact of the Mars retrograde ends in May. So it's a long period of time that we are kind of like working through the Mars stuff. And when Mars is retrograde, it stays in a sign or two signs a couple of times, like for almost 6 months. And then when it's moving direct, it only stays in a sign for 6 weeks. And so you can see that it begins to move quickly, and it's going to move from Virgo all the way through Capricorn in 2025. And we'll look at some Mars transits as we go through the year. So the next slide. So Venus, like I said, is also going to go retrograde, and Venus's shadow begins in January. That means we're sort of getting into the feeling of, oh, Venus is going to do a fun thing. Venus retrogrades, I have noticed, has us review our relationships, has us review what we value or what we think of as beautiful. Venus governs our social cohesion. It governs the ways that we pull together and create together. And so when Venus is going retrograde, we're kind of looking at that again and wondering about that. So it's going to go retrograde in Aries and then retrograde back into Pisces. So we get Venus teaching us about this movement from Aries into Pisces, and then from Pisces into Aries, as it goes direct in April. So these are, that first part of spring is really about this Aries Pisces. What I think about in nature around me about that time is Pisces, where I live, is where the snow is melting, and Aries is the time where we're looking underneath the snow to see what's coming up and what's growing again. And so that maybe gives you an energy of what this Pisces Aries kind of transition will feel like over and over as we go through it. Yeah, so next slide. And we also have every year 3 Mercury retrogrades. What's interesting about the Mercury retrogrades is they usually happen in the same element. And as they move from an element, this year, Mercury retrogrades are going to start in fire, like Aries, and move back into water, like Pisces. And in fact, the first Mercury retrograde is doing just that. It starts in Aries at 9 degrees Aries in March and goes back into Pisces. And this is the same period of time that Venus is going retrograde in the same area of the sky. And so think about snow and what's growing underneath the snow as a metaphor, and choose your own metaphors for this. But the second retrograde that Mercury does, which will be in the summertime, is just in Leo. So just in fire. And you're going to see also in the transits this year that fire is a very big element for what's going on. And I see hemlock, it's giving me a signal. And also that air is a big deal. And the last Mercury retrograde of the year is also going to go from water, it's going to go from Scorpio into Sagittarius. So just get ready for water to fire energies. So next slide. So Jupiter, like I said, is going to go into Cancer, and that's in June. And it's going to stay in Cancer from June all the way through the end of the year. And I think I've said enough about Jupiter and Cancer. Saturn is going to ingress into Aries on May 24th. That's a big deal. Saturn stays in a sign for 2.5 years. It's going to go back into Pisces, though. We're going to get that, fire to water shift on August 1st. Saturn will go back into Pisces. And then we finish the year with it in Pisces. And then in 2026 is when it goes fully into Pisces for 2 years. So next slide. And Uranus is going to enter Gemini, like I said, and that is going to happen in July. So look out for around July 4th, the U.S. Independence Day, where we have a chart for the U.S. where Uranus is in Gemini. So we're having a Gemini return for the country this year. That's just a characteristic of our country, which will be interesting. So next. And then Neptune, like I said, is also going to go into Aries, and that'll be March 30th. It's going to go back into Pisces on October 22nd, and then it stays in Pisces until 2026 when it will go into Aries. Saturn and Neptune are traveling really close together, so this is in the synodic, or the cycle between Saturn and Neptune. Big political changes happen when those planets come together. For instance, this was the fall of the Soviet Union and the fall of the Berlin Wall, and things really important in political orientation in the structures of politics changes when those two planets come together. So that's big. Next slide. And then Pluto. We already know that Pluto is now in Aquarius, and it's going to be in Aquarius for 20 years. We've gone through that portal, and now we're in a new era. And it's just going to, the last time Pluto was in Aquarius was when the U.S. was writing its Bill of Rights, and there was revolution in France, and there was revolution in Haiti, and there's a lot of revolution in the world, so we can expect more of that. So I think that tried to get through that big thing, and sorry I didn't do it as fast as I could have.
That's okay. For me personally, I think it really helps to sort of set into what we can expect. And now we're going to go through each of the 12 cycles of the year. So what you can expect from us is I'm going to introduce the cycle with what the new and the full moons will be, and a little bit about each of the decans. And then Tara, after I've gone through the new and the full moon, is going to reveal basically what the notable transits of that cycle are. And we'll just cycle through all 12. So the first, we decided, because we wanted to get on the new and full moon schedule, as we go through this in sequence, we did include the new moon that's actually going to be happening on the 30th of this month. So technically still 2024, although 2025, it's a part of that cycle. And so this is the information I'm going to be giving to you. So the timing itself is going to be on Monday the 30th at 5:27 p.m. Eastern time. The element is cardinal earth, and it's Capricorn 1. The degrees are listed here. It's 9 degrees and 43 seconds. And so manifestation, so Capricorn 1 is like the very, very, very beginning of earth energy. Capricorn is already the beginning of the earth elements of the zodiac, but Capricorn 1 is like when it really starts. So it's like all of a sudden now there's something, which the keyword, and these are my personal keywords for them. I've been working with the decans for probably about 5 years or so, and I've been working on, if I were to summarize in one word, what would be the highest expression, the most potent expression of this sign. And for me, for Capricorn 1, it is that manifestation element of like, and all of a sudden something appears. So some of the keyword qualities are matter appearing from nothing, density felt, physical beginnings, solidifying, material gifts, the sensory body really being activated, as well as spiritual inheritances. So while something has just appeared from nothing, it had to have come from somewhere, and that's a physics and a philosophical question as to what sort of led to what has manifested, but that is the energy here. So for moon magic ideas, the new moon, you could plant a seed of practicality with the intention that you can absolutely count on it to blossom. Ritualize your initial encounters with physical reality using all 6 senses. So like really between everything that you're touching, smelling, really savoring in those moments, and in those moments that your body is intersecting with the physical expression of things on the outside of you, that is that moment of Capricorn 1 being made manifest. And then to feed your physical body with whatever it asks you for, notice what happens next. So again, inserting something new into you, and then sort of like following the rabbit hole of what happens next. So then we move from the new moon, and actually this energy is pretty stereotypical of the new moon. It's sort of like, it's a really good beginning of a cycle. Halfway through that cycle, the full moon, when the energy is at its highest expression, it's going to be in Cancer 3, which the word is overflowing. On Monday, January 13th at 5:26 p.m. Cardinal water, Cancer 3 is the decan. And then, so the keywords here, it's very much what you would think of here. It is the capacity of endlessly giving, emotional peaks, pouring everything out. Again, remembering that Cancer is a water sign. The relentless support that just sort of seeps to keep going and going emotionally. This can be a sign of excess, but even just emotional excess, like everything just on high. And then release after reaching a limit. So like once you've actually hit capacity, like, and somehow there's still even more coming out. So really, really good time for releasing. New moons or full moons in general usually are. But some moon magic ideas would be to feel your emotions above all else for the time frame of your choosing in a safe place if you're able. Explore your moon sign in depth. So, moon signs and the moon itself being, what you need to feel safe, what you need in order to feel comforted. And like stereotypically, moon lunar activity, tends to be associated with feelings, but for each individual that can be very different. So learning about your moon sign and sort of being able to list all of the need-based nuances of the sign and house. And also to sing chants or songs in the shower that make you feel emotional as the water runs, just allowing what you're feeling and your expression to pour out as the water pours over you, and allowing whatever cleansing to take place. And so handing it back to Tara for the transits of the lunar cycle.
Awesome. So I'm not going to read every significant transit, but I chose these transits because they're either going to highlight some of those big things that I talked about, or so that's why. And some things that happen by transit are sparks of challenge and maybe crisis, and some things are supportive and helpful. I had a list of keywords that I want to share with you about this lunar cycle, which is revisiting power, aggression, revisiting past conflicts, sensitivity to conflicts, collective evolution shifts to spirituality, empathy, mass movements, charismatic leaders, resolving conflict in relationship. So these things about conflict, we turn to our Mars. We see on the 3rd, Mars is going to be opposite Pluto, the 2nd of 3 times. And then right after that, Mars retrogrades back into Cancer, which is moody, and our feelings are coming up. Mars isn't happy in that sign, and so Mars tends to want to move forward, and it's already not moving forward because it's retrograde, but then it's going into a sensitive sign, and that's just it's just not it's not easy. And so we until April, things are going to be moody. The nodes are going to change signs, and that signals where we're evolving. And so I've already talked about that Pisces Virgo piece. And there are some things that are helpful, like Mars is going to trine Neptune, and that's helpful. It's making that moodiness and that sensitivity mean something, and it's like take time in that time to feel into your feelings and maybe to metabolize or compost them. So that's a thing that Mars is really good at. And I think another thing that's going on, we've got Saturn is in Pisces right now before it goes into Aries. And on the 18th, Venus is going in Pisces, is going to conjoin Saturn. And what we're doing with Saturn is learning our lessons and learning how to create boundaries and learning what the things we need to do are. And so that's a good thing. Getting ready for Saturn to change signs. It's like, well, what have you been teaching me, Saturn, while you've been in Pisces? There's also Mars in Cancer sextiling Uranus on the 23rd of January is another really positive influence, but Mercury's going to get in there and oppose Mars. So Mercury can cause some trouble. So on the 23rd, we might have this mix of the positivity and breakthrough with maybe some problems in communication. So really slowing down and taking your time while Mars is retrograde and really listening to the teacher of anger and frustration and letting those kind of fall off. Venus at the end of the month is going to enter that retrograde shadow. So next slide.
And that brings us to the Aquarius cycle. So the January new moon is going to be on Wednesday, the 29th at 7:35 a.m. Eastern time in Aquarius 1, which the word is pioneering. This is definitely breaking away from the pack organized, structures and sort of breaking out on one's own, either by choice or being forced to do so. Some keyword qualities would be breaking away from structure, exiled from rigid structures, or authentic originality, adapting by being yourself, and freedom from old rulership. So some moon magic ideas during that new moon of this cycle would be to brainstorm ideas, remembering that Aquarius is an air sign, always, always, always thinking, that fixed thinking. So brainstorm some ideas, 5 to 10, of how to radically change your life in ways that serve your future, just allowing yourself to really go big, go out there, create your list, and just see what happens, even just from creating the list and going through that thought process. You could lead a discussion, small or large groups, on a global topic that you care about with the intention of connection. Aquarians are stereotypically the futurists, the ones who sort of like want us all to be super unique and authentic, but also like through that uniqueness is, come to appreciate everyone else's uniquenesses also. So when discussing a global topic that's important to you, being able to sort of steward those around you into the future, but doing it in a way that is very authentic. And also to search for articles written by innovators that inspire you to commit authentically to helping them carry out their mission. So allowing somebody else to be the guiding force, somebody who inspires you, and allowing them to sort of serve as the source, the seed of the work that you're doing this month, as you are sort of following their prose and their vision. And then when the moon gets full, halfway through the cycle, that full moon is going to be in Leo 3, confrontation, no big deal, on Wednesday the 12th. Fixed fire Leo 3, and this is sort of after we have, really shined, we've been seen, we've realized that we can make a lasting impact in the world, that we are special. Leo loves to feel special, being unique. This is the doubling down on the energy, typically associated with the Seven of Wands, which it comes up in the moon magic ideas. of sort of a way to, sort of defend what it is that you are, to stand up for yourself. So some keyword qualities here would be courageous acts of heart, fighting for what's right, defensiveness, rising to challenges, relentless activity, and spirit igniting true strength. So again, very fiery energy at the beginning of the new year. A couple moon magic ideas for you during the full moon cycle would be to serve as guardian for a person or cause in need of it, and do what the moment demands. Being honor. I feel like Leos are very loyal, very honor driven, but remembering that they're the ones who are in charge of their values. So whatever their mission is sort of end up being the source of whatever they find right. But being able to sort of stand up for yourself or somebody else within this full moon is going to really lean into the flavor of the energy, and there will definitely be potency there for you if you choose to do that. You can invoke and channel the Seven of Wands card from the tarot and embody the wisdom of right-sized response, because not responding is also a response. We know this, but there's also, a notion of being over the top. So sort of trying to find what the right sized response would be for you in some sort of magical or ritualistic way. And to defend the honor of someone you love, including yourself, and be proud of your ability to show up the best that you can, knowing that it's not about being perfect, but being able to show up for yourself or someone else is something that would definitely be supported at this time.
Okay. So the Aquarius lunar cycle, my keywords are change brings change, revolutionary readiness, receptivity, intuition, tuning in, assertive and passive, seeking salvation, redeeming and healing. So when planets station, change direction, they get stronger. And so Uranus is that planet that is the co-ruler of Aquarius, and it brings that revolutionary urge. And it's going to station direct on the 30th of January. And that is just like, now we go. Now we go towards Gemini. Also, Venus is on the 4th of February, is going to ingress into Aries. Aries, cardinal fire, let's get going. And Jupiter is going to station direct in Gemini too. And so even though Jupiter is not dignified in Gemini and is a little muted, it still is going to grab a hold of that Uranian energy and say, let's go, let's think of new things, let's have new ideas. Discourse will be really important. Mars is going to station direct at the end of February, or February 23rd, at Cancer. So it's got a few more weeks of moving direct through Cancer, and this is when we resolve some of the things that may have bubbled up for us. So if this is an excellent transit for repair. Like going back and saying, hey, I didn't mean to do that, or this is what I'm learning about, what's going on between us, or how do we work this out? Person to person conflict can be worked out, but on the global scale, on the global world stage, conflicts are happening all the time. And can we put our magic into helping to knit together more connection and other ways to solve conflict? And I'm just thinking, mostly that our personal magic does impact the whole. And sometimes that's where I put my magic. And so this idea of how we do magic around conflict seems to be really important during this lunar cycle. So next slide.
So that brings us into the next cycle, the Pisces cycle of the year, with the February new moon on Thursday, the 27th, in Pisces 1, the keyword being enchantment. So this is like the white rabbit energy of like, wait, what's that? Is that really there? I don't know, but it's really engaging, and like, whoa, look how fluffy it is, and I totally want to follow it. Very like Alice in Wonderland following the energetic trail of like the thing that moves you and sort of like seeing what happens next, and what might be happening might not even be happening in physical reality at all. So bewitching mysteries, disorientation, and remembering that these keyword qualities are meant to show some dimension, so some high, expressions of it, but also some shadow sides of what you could expect from this energy. Disorientation could certainly be a part of that. Fumbling around, wonder and fantasies, disassociation, hypnotic states, and discovering unseen worlds. So, with this new moon, and thinking about how this is like coming into, the end of February, if you're in the northern hemisphere, this is sort of like spring, thinking about springing, but not quite yet. So as you're planting your seeds for the new moon, your energetic new seed, it's whatever it is that you want from that cycle. A few ideas might be to wish upon stars. There could not be a better time for this, at least astrologically speaking, as far as the new moon goes in the decans. So during an evening of sky watching with friends, just sort of like make some wishes and see what happens, knowing that magic will certainly find you in one way or another based on those wishes. Visit an art show. Pisces really loves art, being moved by art, a vision, being, coming down from the spirit world above. Um, and name what inspires you about those pieces that you find most beautiful, allowing yourself to be moved emotionally by something that you find beautiful, and being able to articulate that and allowing that articulation to be a seed of gratitude and appreciation of the beauty that you're experiencing, to flavor your month. And get cozy and meditate for 10 minutes. Big proponent of meditation myself, and inviting the universe to sort of deliver mysteries, like actually allowing yourself to be receptive, to sit in stillness and silence, and to actually just sort of be in that receptive state, and allow the universe to sort of fill in the blanks there. And as the season, or as this cycle rather, comes to a peak, we have our very first eclipse. It's going to be in Virgo 3. You're going to notice 2 Virgo eclipses this year. This is the first, being in a full moon eclipse on March 14th. In Virgo 3, the energy and the keyword being composting. This is where we talked about Capricorn 1 being the very, very, very beginning of the Earth cycle. Virgo 3 is the very, very end of the Earth cycle. So Virgo 3 being the like actual decay of matter, that something that once physically existed is no longer existing. So decaying matter, completion of material life, necessary finality, death physically manifesting, recycling old goods, and offerings made to the earth. And I am a traditionalist in this way, because I think that it's, definitely an energy that needs to, because eclipses can be so erratic. I don't personally practice any magic or do anything outside of my normal intentions and practices on eclipses, because I think that the lessons are really meant to be bestowed upon us from the universe themselves, instead of trying to micromanage and like, make all of the magic intentionally that you think that the world needs, giving yourself some space to let the universe lead the dance of change that's going to be happening through that cycle. So no spell work at all these months, is my recommendation. And in that place, allow, notice, process, and release. Just sort of like let things happen, and sort of allow yourself to shift based upon the energy as it's presented.
So, my keywords for this lunar cycle are diving into feelings, relationship rehaul, reflecting on conflict, impulsivity meets exactitude, need for boundaries, and wanting to start over. Um, this lunar cycle is when Venus and Mercury go retrograde just a few days apart. At March 1st, Venus will go retrograde at 10 Aries. And then on the 15th, Mercury will station retrograde at 9 Aries. And this 9 degrees Aries is going to be the next solar eclipse that happens in the next lunar cycle. So what can happen with eclipses is they can you get triggered before they happen if we have significant events happening at that degree. And so we're already going to have in this lunar cycle a lunar eclipse. It's also triggering the solar eclipse that's going to follow it. So it's very eclipsy. It's very and eclipses being elevated evolution that like rapid change, rapid evolution, things just kind of have their own momentum. And so that is just something to think about with this lunar cycle, and especially with this emphasis on we are having these retrogrades happen in Aries, but we know that that means they're going to go back into Pisces. And so that relationship between I want to get started, I want to push forward, and something drawing us back into our feelings, into our processing. I think of Pisces as being that time where we just we need to surrender, let go, release. Some of your keywords for your decans work feels very Pisces. And that, we've got that counterpoint of a Virgo lunar eclipse. So Virgo being how are Virgo and Pisces connected to each other. And one of the things I think about with those two signs is Pisces brings heaven to earth, and Virgo brings earth to heaven. And so there's this joining and the synthesis of pragmaticism with mysticism and fantasy. And yeah, it's a really complex and interesting lunar cycle, those two retrogrades being really important. And then, the middle of a retrograde for Venus and Mercury is called a cazimi, when either of those planets come in conjunction with the sun. And that happens 2 days apart. So Venus is going to conjoin the sun at 2 degrees Aries on the 22nd, and Mercury is going to conjoin the sun at 4 degrees Aries 2 days later. So the cazimi happening in Aries is still a really favorable and almost a time of thinking, we're not really going to start something yet, but we're thinking about what's the next thing. And you might already be like full of plans and full of ideas about what you want to do next. And then you notice that you have to come back and review. Not quite there yet. Next slide.
Okay, so I really noticed on that last slide just how many things like in the previous cycle are going to be basically hovering very much in this specific energy Aries one. So starting off and remembering that eclipses happen in pairs. So we had the full moon in eclipse in Virgo, the new moon eclipse immediately after on March 29th is going to be in Aries 1. And this energy, this is the very beginning of the that's I don't know if you've also noticed this too. It's something that I noticed as I was creating and looking what we were going to be going through over the year. It's very much about like beginnings and endings. Like there's very very little in between. This is the beginning of the zodiac. This is where everything starts, and it is a really really dynamic energy. It's very much like in order to make an omelet you gotta crack some eggs. There's definitely it's an instinctual brute force, raw instinct, impulsivity. It's the birthing of fresh life, and the only way that we can have that new life, the only way that we will ever have a garden, the only way we will ever have a sprout to begin with is to allow the seed to actually break and crack open. So violence is a part of it, and it's a part of life. One of the messy things of being human, and this is definitely it doesn't always signify violence, but there's usually something really brash, bold, dynamic, the selves dividing energy, and survivalism. It's a very core instinctual, impulsive, nature. So, as far as like planting new things, for the new moon eclipse, again, there are no moon magic ideas for this cycle, just sort of allowing yourself to acclimate to allow yourself to notice what's happening around you, how what's coming up for you, what's happening for you outside in life, um, and to process those things and allow that those really instinctual primal changes in the ways that we're interacting with parts of ourself, with each other, with the rest of the world, just sort of like allowing the eclipse to birth life that we couldn't have created by things staying the way that they were. It just wouldn't happen. So that's our new moon eclipse. And then for the full moon, we have it in Libra 3, the word being equilibrium. And that's happening on April 12th. And this is so Libra energy again. That's cardinal air, initiating air energy. But this is the end of the Libra cycle. So again, there's 3 parts of each sign: Libra 1, Libra 2, Libra 3, and this is Libra 3. We're sort of like, we've had a lot of thoughts, we've started a lot of conversations, we've advocated for what we wanted to, we've also like tried to create compromise and peace. But this is where we're sort of like trying to hold it all together, you know, of all the thoughts, of all the promises we've made, of all the things we've said, of all the things we've heard, sort of like that keeping order amidst chaos. Figuring it a while, figuring out a way mentally of making it all work, maintaining mental composure, very eye of the storm energy, attempts at making peace, but again, sort of like a word that I really like that's associated with this decan is a gyroscope. So like all of these things, cycling each other in different, orbits at paces, and somehow it all comes together. And some moon magic ideas. So again, because this is not an eclipse moon, it'll be the end of the eclipse cycle once we go through that Aries 1 new moon eclipse. A couple moon magic ideas could be to balance your perspective by checking your facts and reasoning in moments of resistance. So like if you're all over the place, like taking it upon yourself to actually, regain your balance and composure by checking yourself and checking your thoughts, by verifying your sources, but whether it was something said by someone or a story that you read that influenced your perspective. To help resolve a conflict in ways that foster an attitude of compromise and understanding. Libra is all about sort of like keeping the vibes smooth, making it so that we can all win if it's possible, and sort of so helping to resolve a conflict in that way, of course, with consent. Don't just insert yourself. But doing it in a way that fosters, again, that attitude of like, hey, like maybe we can all come to some sort of, resolution if we talk about it a little bit. Or you could write a letter of limiting beliefs you have and are ready to unlearn, rip it to pieces, and then use the element of air to rid yourself of them. Hopefully in a way that is sustainable. I believe in your creativity and ability to research what that means for you, but basically just going through the process of like listing beliefs, using your brain and translating them into paper or a notes app or something, and then really allowing yourself to sort of let those go by either releasing it, or ripping it to pieces rather, deleting it, and then just knowing it through that action that you are going through the process of releasing. Some helpful thought patterns for yourself.
Okay. So Aries lunar cycle, we do have a solar eclipse at that 9 degrees Aries, where I think that's a very sensitive degree. If you have that Aries 9 degrees or around 9 degrees in your chart, like a planet there or something there, that this means this is a really big cycle for you. We're going to have Neptune entering Aries on March 30th. And Neptune's been in Pisces for 14 years, so this is a big shift. This is a very big shift. Neptune governing our fantasies and illusions and deceptions, as well as our aspirations for divine connection and transcendence and connection with each other. So Aries tends to be a sign that's about individuality, and so we have this planet of the universal entering into the individual. It's an interesting contrast. My keywords for this month are emergence, emergency, glorified heroism, watershed moment, relationships renewed, tapping into the zeitgeist, and power plays. So that's kind of some Aries stuff and some Venus stuff, because Venus is going to station direct this month on the 12th of April in Pisces. And so that's the end of that, relationship renewal period. Mars is going to go back into Leo, and that's that more of that fire energy that got emphasized by Neptune going into a fire sign. And then we have our last Mars opposite Pluto that happens at the end of April. That will be kind of the end of the triptych. We had the election, we had, the assassination of the United Healthcare CEO, and what's next? This is just part of Mars. Mars brings these sparks and activations. And so we do our magic in order to add the spark that we want to add to that energy. And then also taking care of our relationships and looking at power dynamics in our lives and our relationship to our own power. So this is a very dynamic month. Next slide.
Okay, and for the Taurus cycle, which begins with the April new moon on the 27th, is going to be in Taurus 1, the word being bulldozing. And this is sort of after like all of the agency and action and things that Aries has done. Taurus comes in and notice sort of like what a mess the room might be after everything that's just taken place in the party of Aries that has just happened. So this is the process of like kind of cleaning it up a bit, sort of from that fixed earth energy. There's like a commitment, there's a stubbornness about sort of like, generating patterns and curating foundations that will become sustainable after all of the fresh life that Aries has brought forth, and organizing materials, having a commitment towards future growth and nurturing what's available and present there, as well as making use of available resources. So, as you're planting your seeds and figuring out, what you want to come from this cycle, a couple, basic things, very practical in the spirit of Taurus. Perform a house cleaning, physical or energetic, that effectively arranges your resources in a way that serves you. To nurture your body via a practice that feels best to you, and commit to doing it daily during this cycle. So whatever like practical thing that you can either set a timer for or feed yourself every day. Doing that daily during the cycle as a way of nurturing the physical self, and maybe your surroundings. To get yourself dirty also, and then ritualize the process of cleaning yourself, allowing that to turn into a bit of a trance of like, I'm covered in something that is material and I'm going to cleanse it, and approach it with tact and remain, completely present as you're doing this, as sort of like you're seeding, like coming into the springtime season, creating some order, and some fresh expressions of self, as you're beginning the cycle. And then the full moon, being in Scorpio 3 on the 12th of May, Scorpio 3 being mutation. And this is the end of Scorpio, where we've been through this whole like intimate connection with deep parts of self, maybe another person, and like we are forever changed from those experiences, to the point where we can't go back. And it's sort of like, okay, like, well, like how have I been changed by this, very like therapeutic reflections from in an emotional state. So sort of letting go, deep transformation, your endings is wisdom. Grief leading to change. It is sort of like a melancholy, because again, Scorpio is a very like deep, dark, sign that is focused on, like the alchemical process of becoming, and sort of allowing sort of whatever losses have happened to sort of, continue to shape your soul, and to eventually serve as the phoenix that will rise through those dark experiences, having those therapeutic journeys. So some moon magic ideas for the full moon. would be to scry into water, great time for scrying, as the moon is rising, and invite the wisdom of the dark deity of your choosing. We all come from different practices, so whatever like dark mother or underworld creature or deity is a good time to connect with them. Created a charm bag of a couple things that I thought would be beneficial to the Scorpio energy: snakeskin, rose oil, wormwood, malachite. Malachite is a really great stone to carry with you, just sort of like a little, charm bag of Scorpio energy to sort of support the magic of Scorpio 3 happening during this season. And visit your therapist, human or otherwise, and devote the duration of your session to allowing necessary feeling, knowing that Scorpio is not afraid to get messy, is not afraid to go there. And knowing that it is those feelings, while we are supported, being able to allow ourselves to heal through the feelings that we're feeling.
We finally get to Taurus season, which is actually when we get to exhale. There was a lot going on in those first 5 months of the year. And my keyword, like the first keyword I have for this, is exhale. We're going to feel some restriction though. We're going to feel a need to focus will and a constriction of being able to act. We're going to be learning to begin things and refining leadership. And one of the main reasons I talk about focusing will and constriction of action and learning to lead is because Saturn is going to go into Aries on the 24th of May, at the end of this lunar cycle. And so Saturn constricts things, Saturn limits things, Saturn disciplines us and says, where's your responsibility around this thing? So we've had a lot of Aries energy pushing us forward, and maybe some relief from Mars going direct finally, and we want to just get going. And Saturn says, slow it down and get real focused about your leadership and the ways that you do move forward. So another thing that's happening in this lunar cycle is that Pluto is going to station retrograde. And like I say, when a planet stations direction, changes direction, it's called a station, it gets stronger. So it's made its way all the way to 3 degrees Aquarius, and then it's going to start to retreat back to 1 degree Aquarius. It doesn't move a lot. And so during that time period, Mercury is also going to square Pluto, and that might be some power issues. I always think about Mercury and Pluto when they're together as being speaking truth power. So there may be some time in this lunar cycle we need to stand up for the underdog or take leadership, but then Saturn is going to say, hey, get more disciplined about what you begin. And that is mostly what's happening this month. Next slide.
All right, and for the Gemini cycle, we start with Gemini 1 right at the beginning for the new moon on May 26th. And this is the energy, and you will note it happening not just with this lunar cycle, but there's a planet, Uranus is going to be going into this, this sign, this energy, and this is the energy of total information overload. It's where all of a sudden all of this data, and I am very intentional with using the word data as opposed to information, like this is like just binary. I mean, code is how it's shown here, but it's very much just words, thoughts, ideas that like have not been computed to mean anything yet, but you're still being fed all of this and have to figure out how to parse it and to figure out what it means and how it all goes together, and if it goes together, and how you think about the world based on all of this new information. But it is a wondrous energy if we can be in awe of it and curious about it. I think that's a really good attitude. But because of that multiplicity and all of those details being revealed, everything just being uncategorized and unstructured when it comes to thought processes, just having an attitude again of curiosity. That's energy that flows with Gemini in general. And so like if you are a Gemini, like this might really excite you, like, yes, I'm going to get all of this fresh perspective and thoughts and ideas and stuff, and like who knows what comes next, but I want to find out more. That's definitely the vibe of this new moon. So some moon magic ideas for you as you're, doing your energetic seeding. Incorporate binaural beats. And if you don't know what these are, I recommend you look them up when this time comes. They are some of the coolest ways to get your brain hemisphere synced via specific sounds wearing headphones. It's super cool, especially if you're doing it while you're reading, writing, or doing any sort of learning. Learn one word of a language you find beautiful every day of the cycle. So either get the app or just put it in your phone to look something up in a language that you find beautiful, just so you're learning, even if it doesn't stick and you don't remember it forever. Just in the practice of learning one thing, one word a day, would be nourishing. Listen for phrases you hear repeated and turn them into mantras, in support to your connection to the air element. This one's a little bit next level, but sort of if you find yourself hearing certain words over again or phrases over and over again, just sort of like allowing that to tailor and steer your perspective into something worth sort of like diving into and repeating and following down the rabbit hole, as we go into this really oversaturated season of ideas. And then the full moon, Sagittarius 3, the opposite sign. So on June 11th, this is the energy. So Sagittarius being a fire sign, this is the end of Sagittarius. And this is actually the very, very, very end of the fire energy. So like where the fire has been started, it has burned, and now it's starting to burn out. This is like the very, very last push, the moment of truth, the climax, going out with a bang. It's sort of like pushing yourself towards exertion. It's very like activity oriented, doing things, proving yourself, and sort of like miracles happening, these magnificent things happening right when you're at the very end, like pushing towards that very last, getting that last thing done, sort of like being initiated as a hero, but having your energy limits reached. It's definitely the tarot card associated with this is the 10 of Wands, so it's very, very like kind of overkill. But it's peak outward expression. And some moon magic ideas for the full moon might be to take a healthy risk, in the name of something you believe in, and trust that it'll work to your favor. That faith element that Sagittarius that loves to lean into. To push yourself to follow through on something important, no matter what obstacles arise. And you can, take it into your own consideration of what that means for you and your limitations there, and investigating those. And if you're willing to push, but just sort of like making that sort of like the target for, sort of some of your work at this full moon. Burn a list of miracles you've dreamed about for your life, and have faith that the fire will manifest them in thrilling and unexpected ways, because Sagittarius loves a thrill, loves an adventure, and just allowing that fire to forge the miracles and hopes that you have for your life into manifestation.
So my keywords for this lunar cycle are uplifting, explosive, constrained, expansive, devoted, liberating, and contradictory. And it is, and that kind of fits with Gemini, which is the twins, and it's polarities and going back and forth kind of energy. One of the great things is Jupiter is going to enter Cancer, and like I said, on July 1st, and that is no, until July 1st. So it's going to be in Cancer for a whole year, and on June 9th is when it enters. That's a good place for Jupiter. And right after that, on, let's see, what day is it? We're going to have a square between Jupiter and Saturn on June 15th. And that's the last square. There were two previous squares in 2024 where that square between those two planets was like uncomfortable, I think, with a little bit of dampening down on our hopefulness, and a little bit of things feel pretty heavy. And what's the thing that inspires us? So Jupiter wants to inspire us, and Saturn says, prove it, or deserve it, or it'll never happen. And so there is this back and forth between Jupiter and Saturn. And this is a big shift, because before, Jupiter was in detriment, and now Jupiter is going to be exalted. It's going to have the upper hand on Saturn. And so there is that uplifting energy from this influence. And it's a resetting of our kind of relationship to things that are about maturing and responsibility, but then also optimism and what we want to do with our vision. So these are some positive aspects that are happening, even though a square is typically not. I just feel like the shift in signs is going to feel more positive. And then we have finally, well, before Mars goes into Virgo, we have a square between Mars and Leo and Uranus and Taurus. And squares between Mars and Uranus can be very explosive. There's like, sudden or accidents happen or sudden violence. Something makes a big, shift, like an earthquake kind of thing, like tension that builds up needs to be released. So this is something to just be mindful of, and it's just part of the environment of this lunar cycle. It's a great time to be mindful of your own anger and your own frustrations, and kind of working with this energy, maybe through moving your body and being more active. So to move that energy out. And then Mars is going to go into Virgo, and this is a great time, I think, to use Mars energy for devotion. For what do we want to serve, and how are we want to devote ourselves to that? There's going to be an interesting thing called a yacht. It's a triangle of planets with Mars in Virgo making quincunx aspects to Saturn, Neptune, and Pluto. And this is bringing all those outer planets into a configuration. And this might be a time, when I said that Saturn and Neptune can bring new political structures, new things happening. This could be a month where something like that happens. Something falls, something reorients, a dictator falls, a new government comes up. So there's interesting possibilities in this month. Next slide.
All right, and then we're coming into the summer month seasons. The new moon in Cancer 1 on the 25th, and Cancer 1, the word being nurturing. So this is typically when, at least maybe I'm one of the more sensitive people to Cancer energy, but when, the moon goes into that sign, there's definitely, this vulnerability, this tending to what's precious. Whatever your perspective and relationship to the word mother, whether you are a mother, whether, whatever your relationship is to your mother in this lifetime, that dynamic and the emotions and connections that sort of are attached to that space are, ripe for nurturing, and ripe for planting seeds, as you go through this cycle, to sort of like recognize the importance of interdependence and how, like, yeah, like whether it's a human or another creature or a project or a something you want from your life, being able to recognize that at the early stages of whatever this thing or entity is at its life, like there needs to be some taking care of it, allowing ourselves to recognize that sensitivity, and the nourishing of that fresh potential, has to be done very delicately, and with care, mother bear energy, but also with raw sensitivity also. So as you are coming into this new moon and creating some magic for yourself, performing an act of service for a child, animal, or someone in need, being sure to ask for consent, just to take on that role and to do something that, on behalf of a human or creature that may not be able to do it for themselves. Create an art piece, again, that emotional space, allowing yourself to open up if you're able and willing, when it comes to being a mother and or a child, and sort of allowing, whether it's paint or the medium of your choice, to sort of like sift into those spaces and seed, investigation of what it takes, or what's taken you to get where you are, or to help, your creature, or, zygote of choice, ushering it into the best and highest expression that it can be. And perform the kala rite. This is something like Magic 2 or 3.0. If you're not familiar with it, it the kala is a rite from Hawaii, if I'm remembering correctly, and it's a really very cool practice of using water as a purification method. It's a very very cool rite, and this is a really good time to do that. As far as the full moon itself, opposite sign of the zodiac, so on July the 10th, Capricorn 2, this is the midpoint of Capricorn, where stuff has started to manifest. We've got things appearing, and it's sort of like recognizing, like, oh, okay, well, like, I could maybe do something with this. I can engage with it. I can build something more from the building blocks that I've been given. So, starting to recognize some tangible results, verifiable progress, like physical, reality confirming that, like, yeah, I've like done some stuff. I've made some progress. Following directions, focused building of structures, repetition reaping benefits. Capricorn is big into repetition. And sustainability. So being able to, again, use what is around you in a way that will sustain time. Capricorn is also very closely related and connected to time. So you could build an altar in honor of something you've been working towards, and being really intentional when we're talking about an altar, a physical space that you are making magic, being very intentional about what you include in that space and like how everything is arranged, being very particular there. Visit an assembly line or place where something is being built, and just serve as the sacred witness of progress, and sort of witnessing and watching something being built over time. Find a recipe of something you've never tried before and follow the directions exactly as listed, and sort of see what you come up with.
Okay, so in this Cancer lunar cycle, my keywords are change in ideas, scientific revolution, noticing polarities, knowledge liberates, explosion of ideas, insights from first half of the year. What have we learned about leadership, will, conflict, assertion? So why these? One of the things that's going to happen in this lunar cycle is Neptune is going to go retrograde. It made it all the way to 2 degrees Aries. As now it's going to pull back. Eventually, it's going to go back into Pisces next December. Uranus, though, big news, is entering Gemini, and it's going to go back into Taurus too, in November of next year. But for this period of time, from now until November, there's just an explosion of ideas. That's why I had all of the idea things in there, and the scientific revolution, which we really can expect. Pluto and Aquarius brought us to a level. Uranus is going to bring us even higher, with all kinds of AI and aliens and just who knows what. And then Saturn is also going to station retrograde, and it's going to feel stronger and it's going to feel heavier. And that's when we're analyzing our leadership, our ability to have agency. That's one of the things that Aries really cares about. So this is just part of there's that push forward but hold back that we'll be feeling a lot this year. So that's pretty much what I'm noticing in this lunar cycle of note. Next slide.
All right. And then for the new moon or the Leo cycle, we are on July 24th going to be experiencing Leo 1 as our seed for the month. And it's very much exactly what it looks like. It is the like, I'm here, razzle dazzle, whether you like it or not, being seen, or being able to direct attention and focus on other people, so that they can be seen. So star power, being seen and admired by other people, as you are expressing a genuine talent. So whatever it is that you're good at, um, or really being keen to people being in their power, and people's authenticity really shining at this time. It's about the inside of what is special radiating outward and being appreciated by the masses, as the seed, of pride for this Leo season. So some moon magic ideas could be to take some selfies until you create a few that you like, gaze into your own eyes, and say I love you. You could also do this with a mirror if you'd like. If you don't want to do it with a camera, you don't have to. But selfies can be fun. I like to take my selfies during Leo season because it's a good just passage of time, and where I'm at. You could go somewhere public and do something you're naturally good at and take pride in being seen. Use your ability to have awareness of, like, you know, maybe doing something that you're good at, but taking in mind that there are, laws, socially or otherwise, of, like, being seen doing what you're good at, but, taking, the rest of the world into consideration also when it comes to whatever you decide to do. Or to watch a performer that lights your soul on fire and notice what you're inspired to do through their expression of authenticity. And the full moon for this cycle, is in Aquarius 2. The cycle is looking like, and I didn't look, while I did format the slides, I didn't look at the transits, but this is one that's like very, very authentic, very, very electric, and allowing sort of like the parts of ourself, that we were born with, innate with, or the things that we are channeling from above, and sort of bringing into consciousness from higher consciousness. This is the energy, of like the bridge between realms, ideas and everything, sort of like the birthplace of ideas and sort of them coming into our consciousness and us translating the spiritual, into the mundane. So this full moon energy, really electric, unconventional wisdom sort of like being brought into the mainstream. There's like definitely like a psychism here, definitely like crown to third eye ish, if you follow those traditions. Sort of like the birthplace of innovation, where something that is an idea that came from somewhere, that is in theory you, but also shared with the greater universe, allowing those world changing visions to sort of be translated from above, into whatever, is meant to come next. So some moon magic ideas for the full moon: to be a conduit of wisdom, speak messages of hope from a source that you trust to somebody that you love. Create a tarot spread for divination. So like actually composing a question and arranging the cards in a way that is going to allow you to divine wisdom, and apply meanings, to illuminate the entire problem space, thinking about what each card is going to mean, and then what it is that you need to know. And practice bibliomancy. So asking the universe a question, choosing a random page of a book around you or a magazine, and finding your answer through there. Bibliomancy is a really fun practice. It seemed very airy, and a good magical thing to do at this time.
Okay. So my Leo keywords are healing for edgewalkers, repressed anger, passion, oppressive forces, illusory forces, commitment to beauty, truth, and justice. So the healing for edgewalkers comes from the Chiron station. Chiron getting stronger when it turns retrograde at 27 degrees Aries on the 30th of July. Chiron is the outcast. I have been noticing that as Chiron has been going through Aries, it has been about our own identities, and is how are our identities being marginalized. This fits tragically with the trans experience, and I think that Chiron transits, and this is just one that I'm pointing out, but the Chiron transits that happen during the year are where we get in touch with the vulnerability of being that edge walker and maybe finding some healing there. So magic around that. The repressed anger and passion comes from Mars entering Libra. This is not a place where Mars likes to be. Mars, Libra is the opposite sign to Aries, and so it's in its exile in Libra. And while it's in Libra, it's going to oppose Saturn, it's going to oppose Neptune, it's going to make a favorable aspect to Pluto. And in fact, there's going to be an almost exact grand air trine in this month with Mars and Pluto and Uranus in Gemini. And that's just like all of that air. We're just going to get ideas. We're going to get that kind of rapidity of insight and wanting to talk and wanting to connect. But the Mars opposite Libra and Saturn opposite Saturn and Neptune is going to bring maybe some conflict forward and needing and in the best sense bringing clarity, like to things that feel a little shady or not clear, or maybe we're in fantasy around, and Mars can help us to get clear and bring a commitment to beauty, truth, and justice. So that's one of the things that we can kind of try to focus on in this lunar cycle. Next slide.
Okay, and so we come into our Virgo cycle, and spoiler, it is the first of two Virgo cycles. Tara is going to touch in on what this means, but I will share a bit of the flavor of the new moon on the 23rd in Virgo 1, which is the energy of flourishing. So this is sort of the like, after everything has been planted, after all of the struggles that we've gone through, we have actually grown and built, crops that aren't just, growing, but they're thriving, and just sort of like the wonderful world energy of like just all of the bounty and appreciating every pea pod on the vine, fruitful results being bestowed upon us, thriving green spaces, like an attitude of generosity, like being able to give and to offer resources that you have and you've worked towards, just because of that abundance. And there can be enough, if we're willing to be, willing to part ways and not hoard what we have, but just through that generosity, the reciprocity of the universe, like always delivers. Very much that energy. So as the new moon is cycling through this decan, you could sit in nature and just be completely present, listen and see and behold all of the life that is thriving around you, and your connection to it, whether it's your seat, your feet, or whatnot, to just sort of like really appreciate and have gratitude at this time. Gather some personal trinkets that bring you joy in your current life, and assemble an altar in honor of all that you've accomplished and experienced. So really being able to just sort of like through these little mementos, just remember all the places that you've been and how much you yourself have grown and are thriving in whatever way that you're able, even if it's not one that society tells us is thriving. What are the ways in which you yourself are doing well in making it to where you have at this point in your life. And then to donate something of value to someone in need without receiving anything in return. Again, that attitude of generosity, like we all, many of us like have more than what we need, and really being able to sort of allow that bounty to serve others. This is a really good time for that. And as we cycle through to the full moon eclipse, we get to the next full moon, we come into the second eclipse cycle, the last one of the year. This one, the full moon eclipse, is going to be in Pisces 2, which is the energy of enlightenment, which sounds really great, and I certainly hope that it is. But when it comes to enlightenment, that word choice for me is very much a depiction of experiences of like embodied communion, those like moments of like nirvana, or the moment of understanding, self-actualization, really feeling that oneness with the universe, but sort of like that can be such a mixed bag and usually doesn't last for very long because it is such a potent energy of like, whoa, like I'm feeling everything everywhere at once, and I am a part of the web, and like I feel everything all at one time. This energy of Pisces is definitely one of oneness, something of higher than our human experience, that physical experience that we had at the beginning of Virgo. you could through the new moon sort of like set yourself some roots and some grounding to sort of like stay connected to the earth as these like divine things are happening that like we could not have come up with on our own, and that there is some sort of like higher force consciousness power that is fueling us with these things that are going to sort of like force us to level up, and to express ourselves more higher as humans. So no moon magic ideas for this part of the cycle. Again, just allowing, noticing, process, and releasing through these like hyper spiritual things that are going to be happening at this point.
So there are going to be two Virgo new moons. One's happening at the very beginning of Virgo, and then the second one is happening at the very end. This is not uncommon, but it does. There is a shift from new moons happening at the beginning of a sign to them happening at the end, and this takes about 18 months to shift over, and not incredibly significant. So I'm not going to go into it unless you're an astronomy nerd. But this month, the keywords for me are for the first Virgo lunar cycle is merging, but with boundaries and without. Mystic portals, new age, new technology, new paradigms, learning, teaching, innovating, commitment to compassion. So there is everything is clustered. The all of the outer planets, we have Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, and Saturn are all clustered around the beginning of the signs that they're in. And all of those signs are in air and fire. And so just imagine all of those big planets. Those are the planets that shape our paradigms are all just shooting emails to each other, or maybe it's texts. It's just like a lot of communication is going on between all of these outer planets. Venus gets in on the action at the beginning of this month and is just making aspects to all those planets, and that's one way that we look at transits in astrology. The outer planets are just out there being big energies, and then the inner planets like Venus come in and make the message clear, bring it into our lives. So there's some shifts that are happening in this lunar cycle. Saturn is going to go back into Pisces, and that's going to be a big kind of exhale and maybe just kind of resting. I don't know how much resting we've done in this year, but by this time of the year when Saturn goes into Pisces, there is like a turning inward, and just kind of maybe a real strong desire to go back into the water of things. Uranus is also going to station retrograde. It's still be in Gemini for a little bit, but that's just makes Uranus a little more, zippy, and that's part of this, all of this new technology, new age, all of these things. And then this is happening in a lunar cycle of a lunar eclipse. So there's so much going on with this month. Next slide.
All right, and then we have the second Virgo cycle of the year with the new moon eclipse in this composting energy. And if I'm not mistaken, I think of the 4 eclipses we have this year, 2 of them are in Virgo 3. So again, this like disruption, shaking up of what's happening in our lives through sort of coming into contact with the decay of physical matter, things that have gone past their prime. That doesn't mean that they are no longer have worth and we shouldn't respect them, but it's very much it is going through a state change that is necessary and sort of a part of the contract of being a human on this planet. To just sort of like have this new moon eclipse energy of sort of what it means to encounter physical death, and this doesn't mean that there's going to be physical deaths happening of humans, but to just sort of like maybe a high awareness and a ripeness of like just noticing what's stinky and what's like what once was thriving is at the part of the cycle where it's moving on and shifting into something else. Again, no magical ideas around this time. Although I think meditation is probably another good way to just sort of like be present and allow ourselves to be receptive as the universe leads the dance of the new moon energy of this cycle. And then we get into the full moon. And this is, again, the end of eclipse season for the rest of the year. So this is on the 6th, Aries 2 energy of sovereignty. So when we have the like cracking of the seed, the explosions happening of like fresh life in Aries 1, we get into like a vulnerability that's sort of like rooted in worthiness of like, whoa, I just appeared on the scene, or whoa, this thing is, now here, this thing is happening. Like, should it be here? Should I be here? There can be like a struggle with potential and sort of like keeping up this, the fervor of energy to allow any sort of like greatness or optimism or like pride to come from claiming one's power and this full moon expression of like peaking and releasing you know um the energy of like authenticity that is new and fresh and maybe doesn't feel like it's ever been seen before. It's I have it could be a really vulnerable time. Very much a like, you know, being able to center the right to be here, to be who you are on this planet, to express the way that you do, to do what you feel like you're meant to do, and sort of asserting some dominance when there might be some, potential like lacks of confidence there. That's just sort of like a part of the package of this Aries 2 energy. So, a couple moon magic ideas could be to assert control in a situation that arises where direction, action, and guidance are needed. So, sort of like jumping in and being like, using your sense of reason. But again, Aries is not fueled by, in my experience of the archetype, it's not really fueled by a lot of reason. It's like, it's just got to be here. It's just, this is what my subconscious or my instincts say needs to be here, um, as a human on this planet. I'm just gonna try. I'm just gonna do the best that I can. Another thing that you could do is assemble an outfit that makes you feel in your power, the power suit of sorts, and wear it somewhere important. So something super authentic that makes you feel powerful, and just allowing that to sort of like fuel the way that you show up in the moment. I'm also big into mantras. So repeating as many times as you can in one day, I'm worthy of love and power, and just allowing that to fuel the Aries within, the instincts rising up out of you to be expressed at this time, is a good mantra, I would say, for this cycle.
Well, Virgo number 2, we have that solar eclipse, like Aurora mentioned. And my keywords for this are disruption of order, collapsing structure, seeking new systems. Those are all Virgo things, and that we have a solar eclipse in Virgo, basically. Rebalancing faith with pragmatism, technologies, radical innovations. It does feel like every month is the same work. It's almost like how to find our calm space, how to find the ground and the calm and the earth within a lot of that air and fire transformation that's going on. This month, Mars will, at the beginning, on September 22nd, Mars enters Scorpio and then will square Pluto. Those are the dynamic interactions between Mars and Pluto that we've been having. The opposition square is also can provoke, like, experiences of power. Pluto really wants us to get into the health of power and to metabolize toxic power. And so Mars and Scorpio squaring Pluto can be a time where we metabolize some power structures that we don't want in our lives. That might be a good thing to do magic around. Um, then, there's going to be another air trine. That means there's going to be a planet in every air sign on October 13th. Venus will be at 1 degree. Libra will be, oh, that's not the air trine. That's an opposite Neptune. The air trine is on the 14th when Venus at 1 degree Libra trines Uranus at 1 degree Gemini and trines Pluto at 1 degree Aquarius. So that's just a lot of air. And maybe you want to do magic around air and bringing it into your life, or maybe you want to find those balances, how to bring in earth, because this is an earth lunar cycle, or how to bring in water, which is, that softening and that more internal space. So those are the ideas around that lunar cycle for me.
All right, and as we're cruising, coming close to the fall and inching towards the end of the new year, the new moon in Libra equilibrium. So the second time that this is coming around, the energy of like trying to hold it all together in your brain in ways that benefit peace and harmony for those around you. Remembering that Libra is the opposite of Aries energy, so where we had all of this autonomous, like, I'm gonna do me, it's got to come out, it doesn't matter what happens. Libra is sort of like, well, it's actually not about me, it's about our relationship and connecting to other people. And if I have to sacrifice myself in order to do that, in order to make a compromise, I'm going to sort of hold back and I'm going to try to figure out a way to work it all together. um as this new moon energy kicks off, again, more mantras for you, creating 3 mantras for yourself, composing those words in meaningful ways, present tense, keep them very short, that repeat the spirit of, peace of mind. And as Tara had said, sort of like trying to find that orientation is like all of these things are changing, being able to like allow it to compose phrases that are meaningful to you that you can repeat as many times as possible, that'll help you sort of like keep the peace within yourself or within your communities. You could create a vision board of words and images that align your mind with your heart, and placing it in a frame and admiring it this cycle, allowing and remembering that connection is really important between like the headiness of an air moon, but then also being able to sort of allow your heart to participate in that, in some of what's happening in your mind. And then maybe initiate a compromise in a situation where there's disagreement, even and especially if it means that you don't get what you want. Sort of allowing a little sacrificial energy to sort of come when it comes to your thought processes. That doesn't mean that you have to like, I'd actually invite you to investigate, maybe mentally a little bit about what that means for you, because it could mean so many different things. But, compromises are really healthy. It's a part of the whole. Um, and while certainly change is needed, being able to sort of pick your battles, I think is going to be important, definitely during this year. And then the full moon, blossoming. This is a really lovely full moon. It's a really great energy, one of my personal favorites. And this is like the midpoint of Taurus, where Taurus is most happy. It's ripe fertility. It's like the center of a flower that is just like totally blossoming, individual flowers. So where we had like the flourishing of Virgo, where like we've got crops, we've got a field of trees. This is like one flower that is just like bursting open and just so beautiful. So being able to enjoy life's pleasures, there's a lot of sensuality of this, this energy. So like physical climaxes, embodied beauty, satisfaction, and consistency. It's just a really, really lovely full moon. I don't know about the rest of the transits. Tara will tell us in a second if this coincides with that. But as far as full moons go, like blossoming and allowing our bodies to like feel good during a full moon, I mean, like, hey, could there really be a better time for it? So some moon magic ideas for you here could be to treat yourself to something beautiful that brings you pleasure and enjoy it fully. Embrace your sexuality in ways that invigorate all of your physical senses for the purposes of maximum eroticism and climaxing. Like, get your freaky freak on consensually, and allow yourself to just really feel good at this time. And if you find that you have challenges or blockages for that, to list them out, the things that you're encountering that are sort of keeping you from like physically feeling good, and then being able to bury that list in the dirt to be released as a ritual act of like embodied commitment to goodness and to feeling. I can't say goodness enough, apparently. So
So for this lunar cycle, my keywords are reflections, retreating, dreaming, empathy, exploration, and analysis. So this, you might notice a kind of a watery influence in these words. Neptune is going to go back into Pisces until January of 2026. This is a time to really reflect and to go inward and to feel that expansiveness of Neptune being in a place that it really wants to be in. It's a co-ruler of Pisces. So empathy is really important in this realm. Um, and then, there's a lot of water coming because Mars is in Scorpio. It's going to trine Jupiter on the 28th of October. And then on the next day, it's going to trine Saturn at 25 degrees Pisces. So Saturn and Jupiter are not in an exact trine, but they're only 1 degree away from trining each other. So they came from a square earlier in the year to a trine. Trines are easy. Trines are harmonious. They're all in the same element, water. It's a grand water trine. So we've had a couple of pretty significant grand air trines. Now we get to go into the water. And this is it, just drink it up. And because, 2026, we're going to have the air and fire come back. So this is respite. And Uranus is also going to go back into Taurus, which, Aurora just talked a lot about, the strength and beauty of Taurus. So there's Uranus and Taurus is teaching us to take care of the earth and that we can't ignore this. So this is another piece of this, the magic that we can do is we're going back, but with so much more experience to really appreciate those signs of Pisces and Taurus. So that's that for me.
all right, and then the November new moon coming into Samhain season again. If you're in the northern hemisphere, we have this Scorpio 3 energy popping up again, but this time I have a feeling it'll probably feel a lot more with the season because again, new moons coincide with where the sun is, so the sun and the moon will be in the same spot. So there really could be a bit of heaviness and like maybe of everything that's happened, all of the experiences we've had, the connections we've made, things that have been broken, things that have been fixed, things that have thrived, things that have, withered. Really allowing the seed of processing to take place. Of like, what has happened? Where have I been? And sort of what are the ways that I can heal, and to be forged into the next, phase and shape that myself is going to take through all of the experiences that I've had. So a couple moon magic ideas to sort of lean into this healing could be to pour a cleansing bath with the intention of purifying unhelpful desires, whatever that means to you. Soak until the working feels done, really leaning into that, splashing into the water element. Brewing a potion, very witchy. A couple good signifiers that sort of go with the flow with Scorpio energy is nettles, rosemary, hibiscus. Aloe juice was one that I thought was particularly interesting. In honor of Scorpio, maybe say a prayer of gratitude for its healing powers, and then offer that potion to the earth, as a seed, to your future self, as well as like maybe the future of the planet, in whatever form it's going to take next. And then do some sort of like a detox of your choice. Again, not a medical practitioner, but any sort of like detoxing of, things that have maybe gotten stuck, or emotions that have been around for a while that it's just time to get rid of them. any sort of a detox could be great around this time to do a reset and allow, again, a new self to sort of be forged and allowing your intuition to sort of guide this work. And then we come to the peak and coming close to the end of the year. So this is happening in December. We have the full moon in Gemini 2 paradox. And so this is like after we've had all the binary code of, overwhelm of information. It's like it's swirling around and it's like puzzle pieces trying to like figure out shape and what fits together and what doesn't fit and how two conflicting truths can be true, that the duality of mystery and how sort of like figuring out how to integrate all of these different things that we've just discovered that maybe haven't really quite taken form yet, and they come into like some sort of like mental cohesion through your process of like thinking and rethinking, juggling all of those facts, opposite, thought patterns and things in general just coexisting. Very twin-like energy, sort of like twins, you know, figuring out ways to play with one another in ways that they're alike, but also ways that they're not alike. Again, just duality and paradox being the central point of this full moon. So you could write a list of conflicting facts that are both true in two colors, and meditate on each one, breathing deep and holding contradiction, and allowing it to exist within you at this time. Follow a mystery that calls to you and see how much you can learn before paradox seeps in. So, sort of like going down a rabbit hole. If you're a Reddit rabbit holer or a YouTube rabbit hole, this could be a place where you sort of, again, like keeping in mind facts and checking sources, but just sort of like seeing how much you can learn before your brain starts to sort of, you know, become full and ripe with ideas, and just sort of like sitting in that paradox of like, whoa, I can't believe that this is real. And then offer an opposing viewpoint in a conversation in honor of that duality, and then just sort of see what happens.
So for this lunar cycle, the Scorpio lunar cycle, my keywords are about water and about emotion, emotional release, soulful journey, recognizing the value of the inner world and the connected world, openings with new understandings, acting responsibly, acting ambitiously. So on the 22nd, Mercury is going to be in Scorpio. It will trine Saturn in Pisces and Jupiter in Cancer. Is another grand water trine, another opportunity to soak it in. Right after that, Saturn is going to station, so it gets stronger, and it's going to be in Pisces. And so this is like us realizing, okay, the lessons of Pisces are about to end. We're moving forward. We're moving out of Pisces. What have I learned? And Saturn teaches sometimes through hard lessons, but they're always very valuable. Neptune later in the month on December 10th will station as well at the very last degree of Pisces. So we are just feeling it's coming. The Aries ingress is going to come back. And we get another round of both Neptune and Saturn going through 0 degrees Aries. Mars is going to square Saturn and square Neptune at the end at the end of the lunar cycle, around between December 8th and December 14th. So Mars activates. Mars will be in Sagittarius. It's the one seeking the truth, wanting the meaning, priming us for finding those lessons and having those lessons be something that will guide us through our lives. And so that is pretty much what I have for that month.
And then coming into the very last lunar cycle of the year, although I think it's only about half of it, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, because the full moon will actually be happening in 2026, but we did want to offer the completion of the year. So the new moon being in Sagittarius 3, again, this leap of faith energy, and seeding that. This is, as Tara said, there's going to be some squaring happening right before this, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, and whatever that square and that friction brings up, allowing sort of like some miracles and us to prove ourselves to ourselves through expressions of really pushing ourselves to the finish line as seeds for the future, being able to you know investigate what it would mean for us to be the hero in our own stories, remembering that it's the flavor of the narrator and the way in which we're talking to ourselves about our lives, how we're choosing to act in the world based upon what's happening around us that ends up becoming our story, and what it would take for us to be the hero. Any sort of seeding that you can do around this time, um, about that moment of truth that pops up, could be useful. So you could request a miracle from the universe. I think miracles definitely, especially as the idealists of Sagittarius, this is definitely the flavor of miracles. So close your eyes and ask, for what it is that you deeply desire, and actually be brave enough to trust that it will be yours, even if it's not in the form that you originally think. Do something bold that you've never done before, and don't judge your performance, and invoke the Fool. I think this is the Fool card. I don't know if it traditionally coincides with this decan. I think I would know, but I don't. And allowing the Fool to sort of like seep into your daily life, just sort of like going with the flow and sort of like head to the sky, being optimistic, and sort of like maybe seeding some optimism for yourself if you haven't been feeling it a lot through this year. I think this could be a really good time for that. And again, full moon 2026 in January. This is Cancer 2 energy. So this is very much the like incubation, or like the protection of like, of the nurturing. We had like the mother child energy in Cancer 1. This is like, okay, like now we're really going to keep it safe. Like the way that we would, guard an orchid, a really delicate flower that is very particular needs, but is really beautiful and tender and precious, to be in awe of, during this full moon. But more of like from a position of defense, so like not going out and like asserting ourselves, but just sort of like keeping it tight, keeping it close. Um, so it's a really good time for boundary magic, I would say, performing any sort of a warding or protection for yourself or your home using your favorite method. This is a really good time for that. Decorate a tiny box. We call these tiny altars. Something, that it'll become your pocket altar, devoted to something very special that you want to keep close to you at all times. And drink fresh juice. This was one I really liked. These were a couple good, like clarifying, immune boosting, and supporting, essences from the earth: carrots, apples, and oranges, to guard your body from illness. Yeah, wrapping up the year.
Well, the keywords I have for this lunar cycle is idealism, compassion, responsibility to the collective, magic for the outsider, loving the outsider in us, receiving messages about soul, about healing, about our connections. So, what's happening in this lunar cycle is that planets in Sagittarius are going to square Saturn and Neptune, who are on the verge of moving back into Aries. They're at the very last degree of Pisces. And that Sagittarius is seeking the meaning and trying to find what the truth is. And Pisces is just opening up its senses, to trying to understand on an emotional, intuitive, and even mystical and poetic way. Um, what does it mean to be human? We're ending the year 2025 with a lot of questions about who we are, and maybe some idealism or maybe some yearning for, that unity, or that feeling that we can rise above sort of individual desires and competition, and it just feels like a very idealistic end of the year. And then we're reflecting a lot on what it means. What does this all mean? And there's an ongoing thing that's been happening this year between Jupiter and Chiron. And most of the transits I've mentioned have been about Saturn and Neptune and Pluto and Uranus because they're all just doing, really dynamic things. And Chiron has been hanging out towards the end of Aries, and Jupiter has been hanging out towards the end of Cancer for most of the year. And they've been sort of sidelined, but they have been interacting with each other. And I feel that this is Jupiter in Cancer being a very compassionate sign, being a very nurturing sign, and Chiron in Aries being that sense of I don't belong, I don't fit in. Where is the nurturing for me? And so, I just feel like Jupiter and Chiron are working on these wounds that we hold. And it's part of this story. It contributes to that story of who are we as humans. Um, we're gonna get even more and more in this year a noticing of artificial intelligence, uh, just everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. And the question of what does it mean to be human and what does it mean to do magic as a human and to be centered in our hearts is a really important thing, I think, to maybe take us into 2026. So that's what I'm thinking about this lunar cycle.
And that's it. We made it to the end, almost exactly on time. I don't know how we did that, but we did it.
Yes, yes. And we knew it would be like a marathon sprint. But also, you're going to be able to watch this again. And then also, we'll have a booklet of all of this information in it that you can purchase through Patreon, or if you're a part of our mystery school, you get it for free. And join our mystery school because we really love to share. This is what we're wondering and thinking about happening, but it really gets richer and deeper when we talk about it together. So that's what
And
I'm.
Tara, what does it cost to join Stars Dance Mystery School?
$5 a month for the initial, for the basic, and you can go up for. We have another level, which I think is $7 for. We call it the moons, and it's for people with any kind of financial need, especially people of color or anybody who has special financial need. And then our top tier is $12, I believe. And that is where we have some special things in mind for next year for that tier.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us, sticking through. We did the full 2 hours. We so appreciate it during this time. Is there anything else folks want to say before we wrap up?
Yeah, thank you again. Thank you to both of you for doing such an amazing job of going through the year. It's going to be a big, big year. And I'm looking forward to going through it with both of you and for everyone in our school.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good year.
Have a good year.
Here, you want to stop the